In this video we'll talk about synchronization errors that can happen when a user tries to synchronize data that was edited while they were disconnected that result from server-side validation errors. So when the user is editing data and they're disconnected and they make an edit and then click the save button, client-side validation can be performed to make sure that the edits meet certain rules that can be evaluated using JavaScript, but there are certain types of rules that can only be done on the server side, and so those errors will not be known until the user tries to synchronize the data. So let's go back to this component here and define certain types of rules. So I'm going to go here and say for the contact title field, I'm going to go ahead here and define an XBasic validation rule. So this is a rule that can only be performed on the server, and I'm going to just simply say that if the contact title is blank, then that's going to be an error over here. So this is a server-side validation rule. The rule here in this case is trivially simple, but in a real application this rule here can be extraordinarily complex because you've got full access to the database and you can write very elaborate validation code. So we've defined a rule here that says that the contact title cannot be blank. So let's go now and run this component, and I'm going to just make it a little bit wider so that I can see the fields to the right of the list control. So I'm going to go here to this first field here and change that to Maria Anders. So that's not going to be a problem, so I'll go ahead and save it, and then I'll go to this field here and I'll delete the contact title completely, and then I'll go over to this field, and instead of deleting the contact title I'm going to type in a very long value. So this value is going to be so long that it's going to violate the maximum field size of the database. So now I've gone ahead, now I've made 3 edits while I'm disconnected, and now I'm going to go ahead and press the synchronize button. So as expected, I get 2 server-side validation errors. So basically there was no error on this first record that synchronized correctly. Then on the second record over here, our field validation rule kicked in and rejected this edit, and it shows me here why the edit was rejected. And then on this third row, the edit was rejected because we violated a rule of the database. And so since this was a database error that occurred, we don't know, the database didn't tell us that it rejected the update because the city field was too long. It gave us this generic error. So the generic error is just displayed at the bottom of the screen. So I can go back now, say, to this record over here and change this, say, to President, hit the save button. So now that's dirty as well, and now when I synchronize, the second record should synchronize correctly, but the third record still has an error because the data is too long for contact title. So let's go here and do the undo edit, which gets us back to what it was previously, and so now we've synchronized the data in that row. So at this point what we've done is we've shown how there can be validation errors defined at the field level, and also synchronization errors that occur because of a database error. In this case we entered data in a field that was too long to fit into the field. But you can also define validation rules at the actual table level as well. So recall that we've defined a server-side validation rule for the contact title field that says contact title cannot be blank, but I can also go now to the list control itself and go to list properties and then go to detail view, and you'll see that in the list of server-side events here there's a server-side event called validate. So we're going to pause now and pick it up in the next video where we'll discuss how the validate server-side XBasic here differs from XBasic methods defined at the individual field level. So we're continuing now discussing server-side validation that can take place when the user tries to synchronize data that was edited while offline, and we're looking now at the validate server-side event that fires when a user tries to synchronize data. So let's go now and define a validate event handler. So we'll just open up the smart field here and we'll specify the name of the XBasic function that we want to call to do the validation. So I'll say xb underbar validate, and then I'll basically just show the function prototype, which I'll copy to the clipboard, close this down, and now go over to my XBasic functions, and I'll just paste this in. And I'm going to go here and write some arbitrary rule. So I'm going to go here and say that if e.data.city equals Berlin, then I'm going to basically regard that as an error. So I'm going to go here and say that xbvalidate returns has error equals true, and that the error is city cannot be Berlin. But you'll notice that inside this validate function, I can basically have access to all of the data that was submitted. In addition, I have access to information that tells me whether the row that I'm validating is a new record row or an existing record row. And if it's an existing record row, I have access to all of the original data that was available, that was in the row before edits began. And furthermore, this function here can be used not only to validate data, but also to force data to certain values. So we'll see that next. So let's go now and run this component now. So I'm going to go here to this first record that's got Berlin as the city, and you'll recall that now that I have a rule that says that the city cannot be Berlin, that's defined at the row level. And I'll go here to this first record and change that to say Maria Anderson, and then hit the save button and then synchronize. And now you'll see that I get an error, but this time the error doesn't appear right next to the field, because this was a validation rule that was done at the row level, not the field level. So the validation error is displayed in a generic section on the screen. It's not specific to a particular field. So there's my validation error, city cannot be Berlin, but I'm going to just go now and change that to Berlin 2, hit save, and then synchronize. And now there's no problem, because the validation error, the validation rule was satisfied. So now let's go back here and also say that regardless of what value that the user types in, so let's get rid of this rule. I'll just comment out this rule now, and let's just go here and say that e.data.city equals, so regardless of the data that the user types in, we're going to set the city to Cape Town. Now, of course, this is a silly rule here, but you could certainly use this type of rule here to set, say, a missing value or a date ordered field, or some type of default value that you want to put into the database regardless of what the user enters. So I'm going to go now to this record over here and change that to back to Maria Anders, go ahead and hit save, and now hit the synchronize button. And now I can see that regardless of the fact that the user did not type the value Cape Town into the field, we've gone ahead and we've forced the value of Cape Town over there. So what we've shown in this video now is how server-side validation errors will result in synchronization errors. And we've shown how these validation errors rules can be defined at the individual field level, at the row level, and how there's a difference between synchronization errors that take place because of a validation error versus synchronization errors that take place because of a database error. A database error meaning the validation rules were all satisfied, but the database itself rejected the update, and so the UI is going to show that a synchronization error took place. Thanks very much for watching.